It all started on a rainy Friday evening, the kind of evening that clings to your skin and soul, heavy with the scent of something about to change. I never imagined that visiting my best friend's house that day would rewrite everything I thought I knew about trust, boundaries, and desire. Back then, I was just a 20-year-old college student, still figuring life out. My best friend, Tyler, and I had grown up together in the same neighborhood, playing video games and getting into trouble like brothers. His mom, Claire, was always around, quiet, graceful, with a calm elegance that made her seem untouchable. She wasn't like the other moms. She didn't nag. She didn't hover. She simply watched, with these deep, thoughtful eyes that always made me feel like she knew something I didn't. I had never really paid attention to her, not in that way. Until that night. Tyler had asked me to stop by his house to grab some gear, before our road trip the next morning. But when I got there, he was gone. He ran out to pick up some supplies. "Should be back soon," Claire said, her voice soft, melodic, almost too calm for the storm raging outside. She wore a cozy gray sweater that hung loose off one shoulder and leggings that hugged her in a way I'd never noticed before. I tried not to look, but I did. And I think she saw. She smiled. "You can wait inside. No need to stand in the rain like a lost puppy." I chuckled nervously and stepped in. The warmth of the house hit me instantly, laced with the smell of cinnamon and vanilla. Claire moved to the kitchen and offered me a mug of hot cocoa, rich, velvety, like it had been made with care. I sat at the kitchen island, watching the rain slide down the windows. "It's crazy out there. Sometimes the world needs a little chaos to stir up what's been sleeping," she replied, handing me the mug. Her fingers brushed mine. "Just a moment. Just enough." We talked. About nothing, at first. College. Weather. Books. But then the conversation turned personal. She asked if I had someone. I said no. I laughed it off, but she didn't. "You're not a boy anymore, you know," she said, her eyes not leaving mine. I felt something shift in the air. A long silence stretched between us. Not awkward, intimate. I cleared my throat. "Tyler should be back any minute." "Should he?" she asked. Then she stood and walked toward the hallway. I heard the door click. Not the front door. The one behind me. I turned. "Did you just lock the door?" She didn't answer. She just walked back toward me, slower now, her steps deliberate. My heart raced. I couldn't tell if I was scared, excited, or somewhere in between. Claire stood in front of me, looking down, her expression unreadable. "I've watched you grow," she whispered. "So kind. So patient. So different from the boys your age." My breath caught in my throat. "Claire," I started, but she reached up and touched my face. Gently. Her fingers were warm. "I know this is unexpected," she said. "But sometimes life puts people in each other's paths for reasons we don't understand." I didn't know what to say. Every part of me screamed that this was wrong. And yet, the way she looked at me, it wasn't hunger. It was something softer. Loneliness, maybe. A craving to be seen. Heard. Held. Before I could speak, a loud crash of thunder made us both jump. "Storm's getting worse," she murmured. Then she turned and walked toward the living room. I stood frozen, staring at the locked door. Why did she lock it? Why couldn't I walk away? And why, despite every reason not to, did I follow her into the next room? Claire sat on the edge of the couch, her posture relaxed but her eyes searching mine. "You can go if you want," she said. My hand hovered near my phone. Tyler could be home any second. This could blow everything up. Our friendship. My sanity. But instead of leaving, I sat beside her, and the clock on the wall ticked louder with every breath we took. Neither of us spoke, but the silence said everything. She reached over, touched my hand, and the moment our fingers laced together, I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. And that was only the beginning. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was loud. Every breath, every glance, every brush of skin felt like a question neither of us dared to answer. I sat beside Claire on the couch, still trying to convince myself this wasn't real. That at any moment Tyler would burst in through the front door, and everything would snap back to normal. But that moment never came. Instead, Claire leaned back, resting her head gently against the cushion, her hands still loosely clasping mine. "You don't have to say anything," she said softly. "I just wanted you to understand that someone sees you." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. She wasn't just Tyler's mom. She wasn't some fantasy, some temptation. She was a woman who had carried silent weight on her shoulders. A woman who had spent years giving, nurturing, being strong, while hiding her own aching needs. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said, my voice trembling. Claire nodded. "Neither do I. But this moment, it's not about anyone else. It's about us. Right now." I couldn't respond. Not with words. Because something deeper was speaking for me. My gaze, my breathing, the way I didn't pull my hand away. Her fingers tightened around mine. She smiled faintly, like she understood everything I wasn't saying. And then she leaned in. It was slow, almost hesitant. She gave me time to stop it, to flinch, to say no. But I didn't. When her lips touched mine, it wasn't wild or rushed. It was careful, respectful, emotional. My heart pounded in my chest. It was a kiss born of longing, not lust. And in that moment, the world outside, the storm, even Tyler, they all disappeared. When we finally pulled apart, she looked down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have. I don't regret it," I said quickly. I just don't know what this means." Claire stood up and walked to the window, arms folded. "It doesn't have to mean anything right now. Maybe it's just a moment that needed to happen." I walked over, standing beside her. "Have you felt like this before?" She gave a sad smile. "No. That's what scares me." Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the deep shadows in the room. "I feel like I've been invisible for years," she continued. "Ever since Tyler's dad passed. I've been surviving, doing what's expected. Until you came back from college. And I saw how much you've changed. How you carry yourself. The way you listen when I talk. I've always respected you," I said. "But tonight, it feels like I'm seeing you for the first time." Claire turned to face me. "What do we do now?" That was the question I couldn't answer. My mind raced with consequences. What if Tyler finds out? What if this ruins everything? And yet, the idea of walking away now felt just as impossible. Claire brushed a hand through her hair and sighed. Maybe we just be honest. No expectations. No pretending. Just two people sharing a truth they didn't expect. I nodded slowly. "Okay, but I need to know. This isn't just a game to you, right?" She stepped closer, her voice suddenly firm. "I don't play with people's hearts. Never have. And I wouldn't start with yours." The weight of her words settled over me. We stood there, watching the storm. Eventually, she broke the silence. "You should stay here tonight. The roads are flooding, and it's not safe to drive." "Tyler?" I asked. She looked at her phone. "He's stuck at the store. Just texted. Said he might crash at his cousin's place nearby." Of course. Fate wasn't done with me yet. I followed her upstairs to the guest room. My heart thudded louder with every step. Claire handed me a towel, fresh clothes, Tyler's extras, and paused at the door. "If you need anything," she said, her voice barely audible, "my room's just across the hall." Then she walked away. I closed the door behind me and stood in silence. My reflection in the mirror looked back at me, confused, overwhelmed, but alive. Something inside me had woken up. As I tried to sleep, every creak of the old house made my heart jump. Every echo of the storm outside mirrored the chaos within. And just when I thought the night would end in silence, there was a knock at the door. Soft, intentional. I opened it. Claire stood there, in a long robe, her hair down, eyes filled with something between hesitation and hope. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Can I come in?" And as she stepped inside, the door gently closing behind her, I knew we had crossed into a place where nothing would ever be the same again. But I still had no idea just how deep it would go. She stepped into the room with a silence that wasn't awkward, but reverent, as if the very walls around us were holding their breath. Claire didn't say anything at first. She simply walked over to the window and stared out into the storm. I watched her, unsure of what I was supposed to do. All I knew was that my heart was beating like it was about to burst. Finally, she turned toward me, her expression vulnerable. "I don't know what I expected coming here tonight. I just didn't want to be alone anymore." I nodded. "Me neither." We stood there for a while, the quiet hum of the rain offering the only sound. When she finally sat down at the edge of the bed, she looked up at me with eyes that carried years of emotion. Loss, hope, confusion, and something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time, desire. "Tell me the truth," she said. "If this never happened again, would you regret it?" I sat beside her. "No," I said without hesitation. "Because it mattered. You mattered." Claire reached out and gently held my hand, her thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Then let's not overthink it. Let's just be two people. holding on to something real for one night. We lay down side by side, not in lust but in closeness. Her head rested on my chest as my fingers traced the curve of her shoulder. We talked. About everything. Her struggles raising Tyler alone. My confusion about love and expectations. The fact that both of us had felt out of place in our own worlds. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was soft, emotional, healing. At some point, I drifted off to sleep with her in my arms. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely safe. Not because everything made sense, but because someone truly saw me. When I woke the next morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight spilled through the window in golden beams. Claire was gone, but the faint scent of her perfume lingered on the pillow beside me. Downstairs, I found her in the kitchen pouring coffee. She looked at me with a gentle smile, familiar now, but quieter. "Tyler's on his way back," she said. "He doesn't know anything. He shouldn't." I nodded. Of course. We didn't talk about the night. Not directly. But everything in the way we moved around each other. Passing a spoon, brushing fingertips, said enough. There was no guilt in her eyes. Only peace. As I left that morning, Claire walked me to the door. We stood there for a moment, the world outside bright and quiet. "Whatever this was," I said, "thank you. I'll never forget it." She smiled. Some moments aren't meant to last. But that doesn't mean they weren't real. I stepped out, the door clicking shut behind me like the final note of a song. The world seemed different now. Not because anything had changed on the outside, but because I had. Over the following weeks, life returned to its rhythm. Tyler never suspected. Claire and I never spoke of it again. But something remained between us. An unspoken understanding, a shared memory. One evening, as I helped Tyler move into a new apartment, we found ourselves joking about old times. Claire had stopped by to drop off food. As we crossed paths, our eyes met. Just for a second. A smile. A quiet nod. That was enough. The ending and moral asterisk. Not every connection is meant to last forever. Some are brief, fleeting, but deeply transformative. That night with Claire didn't become a relationship. It didn't turn into scandal or regret. It was a moment of emotional honesty in a world that often demands silence. Sometimes, people come into our lives to remind us of our worth, to awaken parts of us we buried under expectation and fear. And when the moment ends, we move forward, not broken, but fuller than we were before. Because the most powerful stories aren't always the ones that end in forever. Sometimes they're the ones that taught us how to feel again. And that was her gift to me.